Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Redeem Her Time podcast. I'm so excited that we are here today because my friend LaChelle Wieme is with us, and she and I have known each other for quite a few years. We've never met in person, so you got to love Zoom to really feel like you've connected with somebody. And today we get to have this conversation that you guys get to listen into about the belief performance connection and how the subconscious programming, right, our thoughts and our beliefs and things that are going on that we can't even see are quietly driving our decisions. And okay, so if that's what's happening, how do we instead, right, get back in the driver's seat of those so we can unlock our confidence and bigger results and really do what it is that God has called us to? So, LaChelle, I'm so excited to welcome you back to the Redeem Her Time podcast. You are a repeat offender because you've been on here many years ago. So, in case my audience is newer and they're like, who's LaChelle? I don't know her. Like, first, just tell us about you. What all are you
Oh
juggling
my
in this
gosh.
season of life?
Liz, oh my gosh. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for letting me be here and be blessed, honestly, by our conversation and allowing us to get a chance to pour into all of your amazing listeners that are here today. And so, yeah, a little bit of background, you guys, about me is I have a background in anesthesia. So I went to school for what I would say like 100 years to become a certified registered nurse anesthetist and eventually became faculty for our Doctor of Anesthesia program. And I was literally living what I would consider my dream life. Like everything that I had wanted to accomplish professionally, I was doing. And in 2016, I felt God leaning me towards something that was completely out of the blue, Lisa. I want to just paint this picture for everybody because I had a very full life. And if I were to consider like the boxes that had to be checked, they had all been checked, right? Like I had married my high school sweetheart, had two kids that were healthy, a boy and a girl. We lived in our dream house. Like you'd think that everything was perfect, but God knew more than I did at the time. And He knew that there was something still inside of me that needed to be called out. And so what happened was I was introduced to a business that allowed me to sell, of all things, skincare on the internet. Now, what's hilarious about this, Lisa, is that I wasn't even washing my face at the time.
That's
I
hilarious.
was like, whatever Pantene Pro V happened to fall on my face in the shower was good enough. And I was busy. I was working full time. I did anesthesia in the operating room half the time. I was teaching half the time. I was in the last semester of my doctorate program to get my own degree. So I was busy in my dissertation, like really, really full life. And God planted this. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, no. And He kept at it. And I wanted to say that this is the first thing I want to just talk about is this discernment that
Mm.
sometimes we wish that things were so obvious, like burning bushes and like giant neon signs saying, do this, do this, do this. But for me, my discernment was really just this gentle nudging on my spirit that wouldn't let me forget about something. And I just kept thinking about it. And I
Mm.
kept thinking about it. I kept thinking about it. And it's like, well, what could happen if I actually said yes to this? And at the time, I was busy, like I said, professionally. But I also personally was not comfortable being seen or being heard. It's like if I could control it, then it was good. So it's like if I could prepare my lectures and everything was perfect, then I could get in front of a classroom. But for me to be vulnerable and to me to be seen and possibly judged from my peers was really, really scary for me. So I had 200 friends on social media. If I didn't know your mom from hometown, you didn't need to know my business, right? And I was afraid of being seen and I was afraid of putting myself out there. And God just kept at it and said, LaChelle, this is what I want for you. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I eventually said yes. And I decided that if I'm going to do this, I want it to be my best so that if it doesn't work, I know that it at least was something that I gave my all to. And so I leaned in and I was coachable. Now, what's so cool about this, Lisa, is that I feel like entrepreneurship, it really is personal development with a paycheck.
Yes.
And God allowed this experience for me to start seeing myself in a different way. And it was then that I started to recognize, like, holy cow, realizing that my straight A's and my degrees and my committees and the titles that I've gotten over the years were really just deep down band-aids of how I was proving self-worth to myself.
Yeah.
And that all of my achieving and succeeding and doing and accomplishing was just try to me filling what I felt I was missing instead of really acknowledging who God already said I was, right? And so I started to have to explore this. Like, okay, this is the thing that He revealed to me. Now it's time to look at this. And as I did that, my business started to grow. I started to see things more clearly. I started to recognize that while I had a full life, while I said that I could check all the boxes of all the things that I felt like were perfect, he revealed that I was actually missing the vulnerability. I was missing the authenticity. I was missing the
Mm.
worthiness that I had been filling with putty of accomplishments, right?
Yeah.
He revealed to me that I was missing the real relationship that I desired, because the real story is that I went into nursing and then anesthesia because I knew that I wanted a balanced life. I knew that I originally, when I went to college, I wanted to be a heart surgeon. And I realized early on in my, wisdom then, was that I didn't want to look back at my life someday when I'm 85 and say that I wish I would have spent more time being a mom or a wife, and instead voted to my entire career. So what he revealed to me in this time was that I had been chasing all of these things, and
Mm.
I was essentially having to give up part of who I really was, wanting to be at my core, which is being somebody that makes an impact and makes the world better, and be a mom and a wife and a steward of the time and talents that he's given me. And so this allowed me to open myself up to what I considered the and life, meaning that we can be challenged and fulfilled and make a difference in the world and be present for the things that we deep down really know we want to do, right? But in order for me to do that, I had to get real with myself. I had to get real with the ways that I had been sabotaging. I had to get real with the vulnerability and the facing fears and all the things that I needed in order to create that and life, to be able to be successful in this online business so that I could be more present for my family and I could be making a difference in the world. Does that make sense? And so I don't know if I'm alone here, guys, but it's lonely and hard sometimes to put yourself out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you and I are sisters separated at birth. Like we both are the box checkers. We're both the A students,
Yes,
right? A students sit in front, A students do all their work. We're,
100%.
we want it to be just done right. We want to be, seen as doing the right thing.
Yeah.
I didn't go into an operating room. That would scare me like crazy. But I did go into a junior high classroom and teach,
That terrifies
prepubescence.
me
I
for
know,
sure.
right?
Like, good gracious.
Yeah, and then your whole thing about like what you were chasing, I describe it as I was chasing my not enoughness, right? And I was always
Yeah,
trying to find my value in my doing.
100%.
And yeah,
100%.
and the
Yes.
Lord gets us, right? I love it. Like he's so
Yeah.
patient. And
Yes.
for me, it was also a skincare company. That was my first start and my
Yeah.
first step into like this next level of how God wanted to grow me. And then that
Isn't it
led.
so cool? Like our and I don't know if you experienced this, but what I, told you that I wasn't washing my face before, right? Like, and I'll be honest with you guys, like it wasn't out of laziness. And I think that it was in my own journey of God revealing to me this deep rooted things that were going on. It was this acknowledgement that, holy cow, I wasn't washing my face because I didn't see that I was worthy of the time
Mm,
and of the money to invest in myself.
mm,
And it was crazy because what happened with that skincare business at the time was that I started to take care of myself. I started to invest in myself, both time and money. And I started to feel differently inside when I started to do that.
yeah.
And I started to carry myself differently. And I started to be willing to open up, and I started to do the things that I needed to do to really fully express myself in the way that God saw me, not the way that I had always seen me.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's so funny. Like I don't do that skincare business anymore, but it changed my life because God knew what I needed. He knew my part of the story. He knew the journey that he needed to take me on and how he needed to get my attention, even
Mm,
before I did. And this is kind of the big thing I wanted you guys to understand, is that he understands the bigger story. It's just our ability to lean into his messages with that discernment, to be curious, to not poo-poo all of the little nudges that he's given us, but rather to be open to them and saying, okay, God, is that you? Okay,
mm,
it's you. All right, I'm scared, but I'm going to do this,
mm.
and let's do it together. And that, my friends, will change your life because he is more for us than what we could ever plan for ourselves.
Yeah.
Like I said, if everything that I had planned for was there, I would have been living just a fine life. At least I got to be
Yeah.
honest with you,
Yeah. Yeah.
girlfriend. Like, I love me some Jesus, but I also sometimes kind of curse a little. And I'm going to tell you that fine, Fine, is my least favorite four-letter F word,
Mm,
because I think that so oftentimes we can get trapped into this fine life. Everything is fine. My marriage
yeah.
is fine. My job
Yeah.
is fine. My body's fine. and we allow ourselves to get sucked into good enough. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, God is like, sister, I see so much more in you than what you see in yourself. Let me lead you.
Hmm.
And yes, we wish that they were burning bushes and big neon signs, but he's going to be gentle with us. He's going to whisper so that we draw into that intimacy. He's going to meet us where it's safe, and he's going to slowly pull us beautifully and gently into where he knows we can go, but we have to be willing to let him do that.
Yeah. Okay. This is so crazy, you guys. And just so you know, we did not talk about this, but guess what happened to me this morning, LaChelle? I was spending some
What?
time in the Lord and with prayer. I'm reading this book up called Hearing God by Dallas Willard. So it's kind of this, not just seeking God for answers in a specific situation, but how do we hear him in all of our life as we walk, right? And so this morning I was just praying through some things, and I just felt like you just used the word gentle. And like exactly what I saw was like Jesus leading me, and then just being the gentleman who like opens the door and then was like beckoning me to walk through that door. It wasn't like he was dragging me. He wasn't forcing me or kicking me or pushing me or whatever. It was just like this really gentle invitation. Like, I've made it really clear. This is the path. This is the
Yeah.
door. I'm standing here ushering you in, but you've got to take the step and trust me that I'm going to walk with you when you walk through this door. Right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that's what I'm hearing. And I love
I
this.
love that. I mean, that's to say, like, he knows better, right? Like, just like, you and I are both parents, right? So we know what our kids need sometimes more than they want.
Right.
And and so we say, God, just make it so simple. Like, tell me
Yeah.
exactly what to do.
Yeah.
But the reality is that if he were to yell and be forceful, we would be like, I'm scared.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he
In fact,
doesn't
the
do
example
that.
that Dallas Willard was using in what I was reading last night was like, as a parent, you would never literally micromanage every single second of your kid's day. You're going to maybe give them some healthy boundaries around where they can go and when they can go there, but you're not going to like literally make every tiny decision, because then
Right.
they're not going to ever grow up. They're
Right.
never going to
Right.
mature. They're always going to be dependent. They're never going to
Yes.
learn how to make decisions. And like,
Yes.
yeah, we want God to like tell us what to do. And he's like, but what if God's just like showing us who to be? And he's
Yes.
not as concerned about the little minute, you know, this house or this house, thing that we're getting all
Right.
like, we're losing sleep
Right.
over.
We allow ourselves to get caught up in the things that don't always matter for
Yeah.
sure, right?
Yeah.
And then we
Yeah.
second guess ourselves. And I think that, one of the things that you mentioned that I can totally relate to, and I'm guessing that you guys as listeners can relate to as well, is that we're high achievers. We are
Mm.
perfectionists. We want excellence for ourselves. And so what happened to me was I started to lean into this personal development space. I started to recognize some of these things that were holding me back. And I had really fast success relatively early on. And then what happened was I started to get in my head. And I started to get in my head because I was trying to do all the things. So
Yeah.
because I'm so coachable, I would listen to training, I would read books, I would listen to podcasts, I would want to be better. I wanted to do it the right way. I wanted to be the best, right? So what happened? I allowed it to be just like this giant buffet of personal development and giant buffet of strategy. And I started adding all these things onto my plate because I wanted to be the best. I wanted to do it the fastest. I wanted to help as many people. Like, these weren't necessarily ego driven. They were pain driven, trauma driven, and service driven,
Sure.
but still misguided. So what happened was is that I started to add all of these things onto my plate. And if one thing could work, I'm going to do five because it's going to help me to make, bigger difference and help more people and do it faster and all the things. And I end up getting completely burned out.
Yeah. 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 And so much, I love what you said. A lot of it is in our head, right?
Oh yeah.
So let's dive into this whole idea of our thoughts, our beliefs. Like, just
Yeah.
even as I was, before I even, got in front of Zoom today, like the scripture came to my mind about like, we are to take our thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ. Like, there's a reason why we are told that, right? There's a reason why it's not just,
One,
controlling this stuff. It's
yes,
controlling what's going on in our head.
100%. And I think that, you mentioned such a beautiful scripture that guides you in this moment. And one of the most fundamental scriptures that I use is Romans 12:2,
Hmm.
right? So do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our minds.
And then you know what the
And
next verse says? So
it
that you will
says,
know his good, pleasing,
yes,
and
so
perfect
submit
will.
to him, and yes, and
Right.
he will show you your good and perfect will. Exactly, exactly. And I think that that verse has really been the foundation of the things that I do. So
Mm.
what I was doing is I was trying to do all the things and it burnt me out. So then this is what was happening to me, Lisa, is that I was doing all the things. And because I was doing a bunch of things, I was probably not doing any of them well, or recognizing that God is like, I have this strategy for you, LaChelle, but it's not everybody else's strategy. This is yours, right? And so what happens is that we're doing all the things and we're not doing the aligned action that God is leaning us towards, because we're submitting to the patterns of this world, what everybody else is doing, what all the gurus are telling us to do, then that's what we're supposed to do. So what Tony Robbins is telling us to do, what Jenna Kutcher is telling us to do, what, Mel Robbins is telling us to do, then that's what we're supposed to do, right? And then it doesn't work. And then what do? We think, well, it must be me.
Mm.
I must be the problem. I must suck.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not meant for this. And then deep down, though, guys, we know that we're meant for more. We know that God is calling us for something bigger. So we can't quite abandon it. We can't quite quit. But we're stuck in this place where we're like, God is like, this is what I have for you, but I am not good enough or worthy or don't have the skills. And we have this doubt and it takes us down this spiral, right?
Yeah.
And so what I have found is that most of us that are high achieving people that have big impact driven, intentions can get caught in what I call the doing cycle, right? We chase shiny objects. We are like thinking that this is going to be the next thing that's going to be the thing that's going to turn everything around. And we caught in the doing. And the doing is like this giant wad of knotted up energy and distraction. And then what we end up happening is that we get burnt out, we get frustrated, we start to doubt ourselves, and then we want to give up. And God is like, I don't want this for you, sister, right?
Yeah.
And so what I have found is that it really does help when we consider who we get to be first.
Yeah.
And then use that to help us decide what to do so that we can have the life and impact that we want, right? So be, do, have is fundamental here.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
So, you might be asking like, well, what does that look like in practicality, right? And this is what I would love to share with your audience right now. So a lot of trial and error, guys. And I share these stories a lot of just like the things that I teach are because I've been through it. It's not because I read it in a book, right? And so I just want you to know that you're not alone if this has been you. But what I want to do is ask you to ask God first. What should I focus on? And if we ask, and I'm going to go back to scripture again. So ask, right? So ask, seek, knock. We ask, Lord, what should I do next? And the seeking part is us listening for the freaking answer. Right?
If we would just slow down long enough to like be quiet and pay attention.
I wrote about this in my book, and it's just like, God is like, LaChelle, I've been trying to answer you, but sister, you don't slow down long enough to listen to me.
Yeah.
And so when we ask, then our job is to just asking ourselves next to just slow down and listen. What does that look like? It's noticing patterns of when we can't stop thinking about something.
Yeah.
It's recognizing the conversations from a stranger or a friend that come out of nowhere that answer a question that you've been praying about. I use a lot of things in somatics. So I teach people how we can communicate with God through our subconscious, and our subconscious is the part of our brain that actually runs our body. So as I'm sitting here talking, my eyes are blinking without thinking about it. My hands are moving automatically without me intentionally thinking about it. So when we recognize that God can actually speak to us through our subconscious and through our body, we can let our body guide us our discernment. So what could that look like from a practical perspective, Lisa? It's asking a yes/no question and allowing him to let our body tell the answer. And so for me and the clients that I help, it's the discernment of, does this feel expansive or restrictive? Expansiveness is him literally pulling me towards truth. Expansiveness feels like my spirit is getting bigger, like, I can stretch.
Yeah.
It feels like I get goosebumps a lot of times when it's like a full on, like, this is what I want you to do, LaChelle. And it's this feeling of breathing bigger, feeling expansive, where you're being pulled towards truth. A no for me feels restrictive. It makes me feel like it's like my spirit is getting shoved into a tiny box.
Mm.
It means that I sometimes get like a icky feeling in my stomach. It feels like somebody's sitting on my chest. That's a restrictive feeling. That's a no. It's pulling me away from truth. And I think that when we can just be honest and ask God to guide us on big and little things, we start to learn to trust ourselves that we hear him right.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it
This
takes
is
practice.
so interesting because I just had a guest a couple weeks ago and she made the statement that I wrote down. It's been coming back to me like oftentimes our body tells us first before our mind does. Our body is
100%.
already showing the signs, it's already
Yes.
feeling those
Yes.
things, but and it takes some time for it to like get up to the brain where we're actually maybe conscious of that.
Yes.
And I had
Yes.
something happen to me a couple of days ago that as soon as it happened, I had this literal feeling from head to toe of like, it was not a good feeling. It was like, oh my word, right? And it was just like, okay, what was my body telling me? And again, we have to
100%.
always put it
Yes.
together with, like you said, not just, okay, what am I feeling in my body, but what is God saying and what is he, what's
Yes.
coming up is in my time in scripture and my time in prayer and, the prompting of the Holy Spirit. But,
Yes.
but like you said, so when we're listening to him, and this is why I love this book, Hearing God, because it's about a whole lifestyle of hearing God, not just, God, I want to hear you on this, right?
Yes, no, 100%. I mean, and that's what people that spend a lot of time with me recognize. Like I ask him for guidance on everything.
Right.
Like my to-do list in the morning. Like, should I call this person?
Hmm.
Should I interact with this person on Facebook? Like I literally let my body help guide me because I ask the question first. And this is again going back to Romans 12 too. Like the patterns of this world tell us that the answers are outside of us. But being transformed by the renewing of our minds, it
Yeah.
includes our subconscious mind. It includes us being able to trust our discernment within us so that we may know his good and perfect will.
Yeah.
And so just letting us do that. And one thing that you mentioned that I want to make a very brief distinction because I don't want your listeners to get half of the story.
Mm.
When I ask God to guide me with expansiveness versus restrictiveness, sometimes, friends, you're going to get this sense where it feels restrictive, but you also get this like butterfly in your stomach. Don't confuse that with that to know. Because what happens is God knows literally like the linchpin activity, the thing that's going to turn the corner for you. He knows the
Mm.
boundaries of your comfort zone. And when I'm being guided towards something that is going to make that next big leap step, it's going to feel expansive because God is leaning me into it, but it's going to feel a little nervous because it's like he knows that it's like, that's going to be a big scary step. I don't know if I can do it. But if you can let the expansiveness lead you and acknowledge like, okay, I know that this is making me nervous. Lord, I'm going to lean into you even more. And you know that I'm scared.
Yeah.
So please give me the tools. Please give me the confidence that I need
Mhm.
to get me to where I need to go. And so I want to just make that distinction because I don't want any of you guys to not follow your nudges if you are feeling a little nervous about it.
Well, and I've heard, and you're the medical person, so you may be able to speak more to this, that the feeling that happens in your body, whether it's nervousness or excitement, is the same physical
It's
response.
100%.
It's
Yes.
what we make it mean up here that then drives, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
right? Like I can get Mel Robbins talks about that a lot in her work, that excitement and nervousness are the same, philosophical or
Mm.
physiological responses, right? My heart rate is gonna go up. My palms might get a little sweaty. I might get a little butterfly in my stomach, but I can still feel that same way when I'm excited about something. You're excited for your first date. You're excited for your wedding day. You're excited for the birth of your child, right? And you can be a little nervous at the same time, and your body doesn't know the difference until you acknowledge it and help it to discern that. And so that's what I want to help everybody understand is that you get guidance, but you have to ask, you have to seek the answer. And then the next one is knock. This is so ask, seek, knock in scripture. And I love to remember it because it's actually ASK. It
Mm.
helps us to remember, right? And so the knock part is that aligned action. It's okay, he told us to do this. But are you sitting there overthinking it? Are you sitting there letting
Mm.
fear hold you back? Are you sitting there waiting for everything to align just perfectly before you take action? And what he's asking us to do is have faith that he is going to equip us. It's the walking on water faith, right? It's the mustard seed where I have no idea how I'm going to move this mountain into the sea, but I trust that it's going to happen. And I'm going to act as if it already is happening exactly the way God promised it. And this is where I think a lot of us hold ourselves back is that we might we might get ourselves in the habit of asking and we get in the habit of seeking the answer, but then we stall with the action part, at the
Mm.
obedience part. And this is where the subconscious things come into play. And what I find that there's actually 7 keys to success that I find that once mastered, you're able to take those aligned actions more readily. But those 7 things that those keys address are the 7 things that can hold us back from actually taking those actions. So even though it's clear what God wants us to do, right? Like several years ago, girlfriend, I had started this business, the skincare business, and went well. That skincare business led me to leading a very large team and coaching and recognizing that there were people who were getting in their own way
Mm.
and that I love to help people to show themselves what's possible if they trust God, which is what led me to my coaching journey, which led me to write the books that I have. But I was scared to leave my job. Girlfriend, I had a good paying job that I had worked really hard for that had all the golden handcuffs of the pension and the salary and the safety and the security and all the things. And I felt like God was leading me towards leaving that beautiful, comfy safety zone and stepping out into entrepreneurship. And even though I knew the answer, I was still scared.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And so it wasn't until 2022 that I finally was like, all right, let's go. Let's do this. And it's amazing, amazing the things that happen even within the first 6 months of me leaving that full-time career to do what I'm doing now and how fast things happen. I ended up on stages across the country. I ended up writing 2 books. I ended up, hosting my first retreat. I ended up doing all these things that I had been praying about for a long time, but it was that action, that obedient action that started to unlock all these other things because God's like, okay, finally, you trust me.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it always starts right in our head and our heart. And
Yeah.
then that's what's going to move. Because if we're always, either believing the lies of the enemy or just, the things that we're telling
Yeah.
ourselves, we're not
Oh,
going to be
yeah.
stepping out in faith. We're not going to be knocking. We're just going to, like you said, stay in the loop of asking and maybe seeking, but maybe not. Maybe, and here's where I think we can over spiritualize things sometimes too and be like, well, I'm still praying about it. When
Oh, yeah,
we
totally.
very well know that he's already shown us something and we just want another fleece, or we want more confirmation.
100%, 100%, which is exactly again why I've identified these 7 things that will hold us
Yeah.
back.
So are you going
And
to share
there's
those with us?
I absolutely can if you want me.
Okay.
So let's start. So the very first one is I call them my 7 C's. So I'm going to start with the first one is the power of choice, right?
Mm.
So you brought up the enemy, Lissa, and I'm just going to say that the enemy is going to try to convince you otherwise. He's going to try to convince you that you're a victim to your circumstances. He's going to try to convince you that you are powerless to something outside of yourself. And the moment that you get to acknowledge that you get to choose, that you can either be a victim or you can be a victor, and that you can
Mm.
either focus on all the ways that life isn't fair and life is hard or that things have happened to you, or you get a chance to choose to find solutions and rise above it. And so that is the first key is just that distinction that I am going to choose to be empowered versus powerless to my circumstances. And again, the enemy is going to try to convince us that we are powerless to something outside of ourselves. But in fact, God reminds us that he lives inside of us and that the power of the Lord lives in every single cell of my body,
Mm.
that I have everything that I need inside of me. And the enemy wants us to forget that. So you get to choose to rise above, right? So the second one is going to be geared towards the clarity piece. Now, oftentimes, again, we can allow ourselves to convince ourselves, or the enemy can convince ourselves that we are unclear. If only I just have all of these pieces together.
Mm.
I'm not quite sure. I'm going to continue to pray on it. That confusion cyclone of staying stuck in this muck is a distraction. And so again, when we can remember to ask, seek, knock, when we can allow ourselves to remember that all of the answers that we're seeking are available to us at all times, and that we get a chance to lean into that, then things will start to clear up for us. Now, this is clarity around our purpose. This might be clarity around our business and where we should go. This might be clarity around, should I do this strategy or that strategy? It might be something as simple as, I don't know how to prioritize my day. So how can I get clear on that? The other thing that I love to bring clarity into this is, how am I, me, LaChelle, me, Lissa, uniquely equipped for this? If God called us there, and remember, friends, that He puts these desires on our heart as the lighthouse that allows us to lean into that. So you're not being selfish, you're not being arrogant, you're not being whatever if you want a better, beautiful, big life. God uses these beautiful seeds of implanted desires to help lead us into the next step so that we can make a big difference. So just remember that. But He also is going to equip you. So if He planted that desire, He's going to equip you with it. He's going to equip you with the knowledge that you have. Maybe the knowledge from hard knocks, maybe the knowledge from school and past jobs. He's going to equip you with experience that you've had. He's going to equip you with your God-given talents and passions and core values that are imprinted into who you're being. He's going to use that. And the combination of all of those things are what make you special. But oftentimes we can't see the label on the outside of the jar because we are inside of the jar. And so this is where we get a chance to use things that can help us to have that clarity around, wow, I never saw that as what makes me special because it's just who I am. But when we can use techniques to help us to read that label and understand that, wow, I never saw it that way, but I am uniquely equipped for this, then that clarity piece can help us to form those next steps, right?
Yeah,
Um,
beautiful.
that the next one here is connectedness. So connectedness is going to be the thing that allows us to acknowledge that intuition. That if we stay stuck in our head and our logic, and I'm gonna bring this, I'm gonna grab a piece of paper just to kind of show you. So if I were to think about my brain, and I geek out, you guys, on brain science and quantum physics and scripture, like that's like my secret sauce, I guess, to the way that I look at the world. Our brain is wired for efficiency. And there's a part in our brain called the reticular activating system that allows for our brain to filter out anything that does not seem important. When God designed us, He designed us to be able to trust our caregivers. And our brain is stuck in what we call theta brainwave until we're 7 years old, which means that it's very impressionable, which means that whatever we learn, it goes straight into our subconscious as part of the programming. Think of the software that run your computer. That's what your subconscious programming can do. And those programs are written before you're 7 years old. Okay. So your brain is constantly taking in all the things that you're learning from your parents, from society, and it's creating an idea of how the world works and how you fit in the world. And your brain is going to naturally filter out anything that does not align with that. So when we think about that programming that happened before we were 7, we allow the acknowledgement that things are filtered out that don't align with that. We acknowledge that we have tiny little sliver of the experiences that are possible in the world. Then we start to realize that the answers that are available to us are about as wide as this boulder, a sliver compared to everything that is possible if we open ourselves up to the knowledge that God has. And that's where the intuition comes in. That's where us asking spirit to guide us, that allows for us to be able to ask our body to help decipher. So when we open up that power of letting God speak to our spirit through our intuition, we start to recognize that we have not just a sliver of information that we rely on our logic for, but all of the beautiful answers that are available to us if we ask, right?
Yeah.
And then learning how to really ask and decipher and those types of things that we've already talked a lot about. The next C is confidence. Now, this is where we start to acknowledge what are some of those limiting beliefs that are holding me back. I have clients, for example, that come to me. They're like, LaChelle, I'm tired. I've been feeling like I'm running on a treadmill. My business is can't quite scale. I feel like I'm missing family dinners. Like, I'm not ready to give up, but I can't keep doing this.
Mm.
And then we discover that they have a fear of charging what they're worth. They have a fear of um of wanting to have a bigger paycheck because they have a deep down rooted a worthiness limiting belief, right? Or they have a belief that they may be selfish if they have a big, beautiful life. And so there's limiting beliefs that hold us back. They might believe that it's too hard to hire somebody, or that they can't afford it, or it's overwhelming. And so it gets them stuck in those hamster wheel activities, right? And so getting to the belief roots of what's going on. I had a belief, girlfriend, that was holding me back for a long time. And it was the belief that I was responsible for other people's emotions.
Mm. Yeah.
And so it kept me from having hard conversations with people or telling them what they needed to hear instead of what I wanted to hear. And that was holding me back from being the coach that I could be. I've had a fear of bothering people. So therefore, I didn't follow up with people like I could have. Right. And so getting to the root of those limiting beliefs and shifting those and having confidence in yourself is going to allow for you to then again take this aligned action that God is leading us to. The next C that I go through on this is consistency.
Mm.
And the consistency part is key here because oftentimes people want to go to the strategy. They want the social media marketing strategy. They want the AI strategy. They want the sales and marketing strategy, right? All of these steps before this had to come in so that you can actually execute those strategies from a place of not sabotaging yourself. And then it's asking God to tell me which strategy that I should do. And then once you've decided on that with God, then it's time to execute and it's time to get out of your own sticking way. So oftentimes we have patterns of disorganization, or we just have knowledge gaps of I don't know how to use AI, or I don't know how to automate. I don't know how to delegate. And so when we can start to align ourselves with what strategies God want, and then how do I allow for peak performance to come in and enable for me to be more consistent. I just last weekend actually held a social media workshop. And do I claim to have all of the knowledge of every trend that just came out yesterday that's going to change tomorrow? Absolutely not. I don't care enough because that's not important. What's important is what are beliefs that are holding you back from showing up in the first place?
Mm.
And then how can we create systems to help you be consistent? And so I help my people create a year's worth of social media content in a weekend that's aligned with their ideal client, right? And those are systems to allow us to be consistent, because you can have the best ideas in the world, but if you don't actually execute them and execute them consistently, you're going to fall flat, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the last one is conquer. And really this is about resiliency, because at the end of the day, God never promised it was going to be easy.
Right.
And I think that sometimes people think that if it's not rainbows and sunshine and unicorns every single day, that I must be doing something wrong, or I must not be hearing him right. And maybe I'm not cut out for this. And honestly, life happens, does it not? Like you and I both have stuff that we're going through behind the scenes that can throw us off. And we could easily just say, oh, I give up. I'm gonna focus on this and not worry about my business. And really what I want people to know is that there are tools that we can use to help us stay the course and honor ourselves and our self-care, right? And allow for us to continue to be guided by the greater why and the greater impact and the mission and the calling that the Lord is having for us while navigating living in a falling world.
Yeah. Yeah. Because therein are the limitations, right? Not only do we have the limits of 24 hours, the limits of bodies that can't even go 24/7. We have to sleep.
Exactly.
Right? Which is beautiful. It's a gift because it makes us depend on him. But like you said, we have these
Yeah.
other factors going on outside of us.
And then I forgot to mention courage is in there. I apologize.
Okay. I was wondering if I missed one. I was like, wait, I have a blank. I don't like blanks.
Yeah. Courage. And so that's where the fear comes in. And this is something that I hope that gives you guys some inspiration, because fear is one of those big things that's going to prevent us, right, from taking that aligned action. And I just want you to know that fear, we make it into this giant big thing. But I'm going to deflate its ego for a second, right? And the enemy wants us to believe that fear is this big, giant, hairy obstacle. But as we know, that perfect love casts out fear. So what does that look like? It's the acknowledgement that fear is really comes down to our belief of whether or not we can handle something. So it might be fear of the spider. It might be fear of my kids dying. It might be fear of losing my job or quitting my job. At the end of the day, the thing that all of those have in common is, can I handle this? And once you acknowledge that and can deflate that, the power that the enemy tries to put into the fear of being so big, and you can ask yourself, okay, what am I really afraid of? What, at the end of the day, what is the worst possible case scenario that could happen from this? And then you ask yourself, well, if that happened, what would I do? And by just acknowledging, like, okay, I would call this person, I would do this, I would go back to school, I would get another job, I would swipe the bug away, I would, whatever the case may be. If you can actually ask yourself, what would I do when that happened? There's something that happens inside of your spirit where you're like, oh, okay, I can handle this. And that's all God is asking us to do, is to remember that he's going to equip us. He's going to send us the people. He's going to send us the tools. He's going to give us the comfort that we need. But we have to be willing to trust him that he's going to do that. Yeah. And I think that sometimes as a human, when we can just like dumb it down for ourselves and say, well, what am I really afraid of? And what would I do if that happened? It takes the power out of it. And it helps us to just recognize that we can handle it. And then we'll maybe able to take the next tiny step that can be revealed. And then the next tiny step after that, and the next tiny step after that, until all of a sudden we're like, holy crap, how do you get to the top of this mountain?
Right? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Such beautiful truth. I love this. I mean, it was just recently in Matthew reading about when the disciples were with Jesus in the boat, right? And the storm comes up, and it's like, you know, a bad enough storm that they're like fearing for their lives. And he didn't condemn them for their fear, but he was like, but you're looking in the wrong place, right? And so like he was in the boat with them, and they still had that fear. And so I think it's just, yeah, where am I putting my focus? Is it on the storm around me that feels really big, like it's about to overtake me? Or is it on the one who can, you know, control the wind and the waves? And their response is just so amazing. Like, wow, who is this that can even control the wind and the waves? You know, and it was just that one step closer to understanding who he was and who he was calling them to be. And yeah. I love this. I love this. So we started off by saying like our, you know, when we have these wrong beliefs, right, they're quietly driving our decisions in a wrong way. I have something I've created called the STEER belief map, and it's an acronym that takes you through a situation, a thought, an emotion, the execution, and the result, right? Yes, and when it's the wrong thought, right, you better believe the results that are coming out are not where you want to end up, right? Whether it's a tangible result or intangible. But so let's kind of talk about the other side, right? Because here's the thing. Oh, this is hard. Like what you just told us, like all the C's, I love alliteration. So I'm like, okay, good. That's easy. Remember the C's. But like when you really think about doing it, it's like, whoa, right? And so I think we have to know, we can't be guaranteed what's on the other side, right? Of like walking this way. But like how does this shift either, you know, things around the way that we spend our time, or even just the results that we're seeing from our time when we start getting these thoughts, taking them captive and implementing these 7 C's.
I think that, you know, I'm going to just keep this really simple in the sense that if we can just ask first, because again, I don't want to get in our heads. And if we ask first and we just start to practice that, and I tell people, like, I want you to just like things that aren't big and scary, like help me determine, like, should I do this next on my to-do list? Yes or no? Should I park here? Yes or no? Should I go to this store first? Yes or no? And we start to get ourselves to trust ourselves and our own discernment, we'll be able to make those bigger decisions feel less heavy, right? So I think that the first thing is literally just to get yourself into the habit of asking and learning to trust yourself with practice, okay? And then remembering, again, that God is not asking us to jump across the entire canyon. He's asking us to take the next aligned, inspired step. And it's like when you think about it, I don't remember what movie it was. It might have been Indiana Jones. It's like they took the step and then the rock appeared underneath them. And then
Mm.
they took the step and then the rock appeared underneath them because they had that blind faith in that step. He's not asking us to do all these things. He's asking us to just take one next step at a time,
Yeah.
one tiny step. People oftentimes confuse action with needing the confidence to take the action, but confidence comes from action.
Mm.
It's not that action creates confidence. I'm sorry, it's not that confidence creates action. It's that action creates confidence because what happens is we take the small, tiny action and we say to ourselves, huh, oh my God, I
Didn't
didn't die.
die.
My
Still
friends and
here.
family are still talking to me. Like I think about that, like how I catastrophize things back when I was first starting my skincare business. And like literally, Lisa, I would like imagine going to the grocery store and people that had seen me post about my skincare business on the Facebook, I imagine that they would see me on the aisle and run the other direction. That never happened.
Right.
The things that we do, right? So, but I had to just take the step and then be like, huh, okay, I did not spontaneously combust. People keep talking to me. I'm okay. And then I take the next action and then I see like, huh, okay, I'm okay. And then before you know it, you have thousands of followers and a podcast and you're on stage and all the things. Why? Because I took one tiny action and then the next action. Okay. I also want you guys to recognize that I love how you beautifully said like there's a right and a wrong way to do things. And I think that people like myself who are very hard on ourselves
Mhm.
and think that there is a right or a wrong always, and that we are bad or good or mess up, like that all or nothing thinking has been probably the hardest thing for me to overcome.
Yeah.
And I want you guys to just give yourself some grace and say, well, what's a good, better, best approach to this?
Mm.
Right. And if we can do that, we let ourselves exhale a little bit more. We stop shaming and guilting ourselves, which is going to just literally be the thing that's going to help us spiral the fastest is when we guilt and shame ourselves into thinking that we should have done something better. And I want you to just be like, okay, it was that interesting. Just like capturing your thoughts. You mentioned that scripture,
Be
like, isn't that
curious. Yeah.
interesting? Isn't that interesting? Huh, I did that again.
Mm.
Okay, huh, isn't that interesting? I wonder what
Yeah.
that was about.
I recently
And
heard this quote that really stood out to me. And for those of us who like to be black and white, we're doing
yes,
everything right. And it said, discernment is not being able to differentiate between good and bad. Like, hello, we're not going to go rob a bank or like run a red light or whatever, like, because we know, at least most of us. But discernment is being able to tell the difference between good and almost good.
yeah,
Like, wow, right? And almost
yes,
good still isn't necessarily bad. And so even if you end
yes,
up choosing the almost good, it's like it's okay. It's not like all of a sudden now all God's plans went
exactly.
out the window because you
He,
just thwarted them.
100%. Like God is too much too powerful than that. Like
Yeah.
just think about it is that the bunker guards at the bowling alley, right? Like he allows for free will, but he's not gonna make us go off the rails. Like
Yeah.
he's got us, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that that's one of the things that I would say is that what I teach people in the flow state money method, which is my methodology, is ask for guidance first and trust that, and then take aligned action. And if you find yourself stalling, then asking yourself, okay, is there toxic thoughts that I get to shift here? And just be curious about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that that's where I think a lot of us can get really down in ourselves is like not being curious about it. And I in my book I wrote about this like where you and I are in the generation that we probably watched Scooby-Doo,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And
Scooby-Doo.
it was like, I always think about it like at the end of every episode, they'd capture the bad guy, and the bad guy would be like, I could have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you pesky kids, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was just like play with yourself a little bit in that space and just be like, oh, look at you. You thought you could get away with it, but I caught you, you little stinker. And
Yeah.
now we're going
Yeah.
to shift it and just be playful with yourself instead of being so hard on yourself and telling you did it wrong again. What's wrong with you? You're not cut out for this. Like gosh, you guys, like give yourself a little bit of grace and be playful in
Yeah.
your ways and allow for yourself to just be like, okay, it's not interesting. I did that again. I wonder where that
Mm.
happened. I wonder where that
Mm.
came in. And then like, allowing yourself to just explore that a little bit. And there's, techniques that I take people through on these 7 C's. But honestly, the big picture is allowing yourself to just not take yourself so stinking seriously, where you put all this pressure, the weight of the world on you. Take a little tiny step in obedience. Okay, how did that go? And this is what I want to say too, really quickly, because I think that people ask me a lot. They're like, LaChelle, when I discern, when I ask these yes, no questions, how do I know it's not just me telling myself what I want to hear? That's one of the most common questions I get. And my answer is always that God leads me to places all the freaking time that I would not have done. And I'd be like, are you sure? And then I'll ask again. I'm like, but are you sure? Are you sure right now I should do that? Like, are you sure? And it's like, yes, LaChelle, yes, it feels expansive. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And so that's my first answer to that question is like, he guides me all the time to do things that I would not have normally chosen to do, but he knows better. And then my next kind of caveat to that though, Lisa, is that there are times where I'm like, that did not turn out the way I thought it was gonna. God, are you sure that's what? And then I start to, maybe doubt my own discernment. And then I stop and I pause and I say, okay, hold tight. God, I asked you if I should do this, and it didn't turn out the way I thought it would. But if I didn't do it, then this wouldn't have happened. And you knew that, didn't you? And then I get this full on like goosebumps. I'm like, okay, yes.
Right. Yeah.
And so just asking and trusting that he's always going to be guiding us, guys, where we need to go. It's just a matter of are we willing to listen? Are we willing to take imperfect action? Are we willing to experiment and be playful with ourselves and see what happens with that?
Yeah. I love this. I think this is such a timely conversation. I know it is for me, and I pray that it is for our listeners. And we could talk all day
I know,
because
right?
we've only just barely scratched the surface of all of this. So tell us what would be a good next step for someone. I know you've got resources and ways that you help people with this. So like if somebody's listening, going, okay, I would love
Yes.
to be more headed in that direction. Where would you send them next?
Yeah. One of the things I would say is I have this really great little mini course that I think would be a great follow-up to this conversation. Is called the Flow State Money Reset. And it really just teaches people about this discernment piece. It teaches them how to lean into this methodology. And I think that would be a really nice, it's completely free. And it'll just give you guys a little bit more guidance on some of the things that we talked about today.
Love it. We'll make sure to link to that in the show notes. And my listeners know we always take the conversation off the podcast into our community where we can actually say, hey, this is hard. Or, yay, guess what? Here was what my 20 seconds of courage, and here's what happened from it. And we encourage and inspire each other. So I always invite my guests in there. And of course, anyone who's listening, if you're not already a member, the link is in the show notes, redeemhertime.com/community. Come and join us because we are giving ourselves grace and we are being real about the joys and the struggles and the easies and the hards. And this is how we like walk this out together instead of just like having great intentions. When you listen to a podcast, how often do we do that? And then we just go right on with the next thing.
Yes.
So I'm going to invite everybody to come join us over there. So thanks, LaChelle, so much for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us today. I know a lot of women are going to be blessed by our conversation and hopefully moved to aligned action like you challenged us. So in closing, I always like to ask a more personal question just to kind of get a sense of, what's going on in your world. How would you answer the question, what is it time for? Whether it's in business or in life, like what do you feel like the Lord is saying, LaChelle, this is what it's time for right now?
Yeah. No, this is great. I think that one of the things that I have really been leaning into in my prayer time and my discernment time is this. Have you guys talked about on the show at all the Chinese calendar and the year of the snake and the year of the horse?
Mm-mm.
Now, I want you guys to understand that when I bring that up, it doesn't mean some mystical thing. It doesn't mean a predictive thing. It's like, think about it like the Farmer's Almanac and what the Chinese have done over 12,000 years, sorry, 2,000 years is looking at patterns of cyclical things.
Mm.
And in 2025, what that year has represented in the cyclical calendar is the year of the snake is the year of shedding. It's shedding past beliefs. It's shedding things that no longer are serving us. This is the shedding of things that God is saying, I don't want you to carry this into the next season. So when I think about my version of Romans 12:2 is, and not being conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, is imagining Michelangelo carving the statue of David. And really what he was doing is just chipping away at rocks.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is that I want you to think about this as this past year, if you felt like this has been a hard season, and you feel like you've had to face things that you haven't wanted to face, it's on purpose. And this is our way of shedding, is it's clearing away the plaster, the rock that is going to reveal the statue of David that is you underneath, right? The year of the horse that follows this is the year of action and visibility. And so what I wanted to do is just acknowledge, Lisa, that if you guys have felt like this has been a hard season, know that there's nothing wrong with you. It's actually something that is happening for many, many people. And knowing that in February 17th is the beginning of the Chinese New Year. This is the year of the horse when it starts. And this is the year where we get a chance to dust our plaster off, stand in the statue of David of ourselves, and to say, where am I willing to show up authenticity, with vulnerability, with my vision, with my courage? Because this is the year that my voice, that my face, that my mission, that my thoughts get to be shared with the world. And I'm going to ask you, are you ready to let this be your motion year, where the shedding and the introspection and the self actualization and introspection has been happening to prepare you for this? And so where are you ready to step into that visibility, that action, so that we get to hear from you and your unique, beautiful insight and experience and heart to make the world better?
I love how God like takes us through seasons of pruning and shedding,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Before he calls us into this new action, because otherwise we'd be dragging all that weight with us.
100%.
We'd be exhausted and probably not make
Exactly.
it very far. So thank you. Thank you for that. And just how beautiful timing, because this is coming out 2 days after that transition happens that you just were talking about with the new year. And
Perfect.
yeah, what does God have for us to now that we've shed some things to now step out and
Yay!
do
Can't wait to see
something?
what
So.
that looks like for all of you guys.
I
For
know,
sure.
me too. All right, so we'll continue the conversation over inside the community. Thank you so much, LaChelle, for being here
Bye,
today.
guys.
We'll see you guys soon.